Hey everyone, what's up? Well, I hope this sound quality is a lot better than the other one. I really don't know what happened to it. I guess it's some sort of glitch from the camera. Anyway, so this video is called Tea Recommendations Good Beginner Series. I've gotten so many requests from people asking me what tarantula should they get as a new tarantula. Well, here I am and I'm going to upload it. A refreshing video that I did 3 years ago, and I guess a lot of people overlooked that video since I've made so many videos in the past and I've acquired a lot more tarantulas since 3 years ago, so my opinions may or may not have changed since then. But anyway, let's get started. So there's a lot of recommendations that I can make for new beginners, but it really depends on your individual tastes on a tea. Do you like some of them that are very colorful or very dull colored, some of them that web extremely heavily, some that are not, ones that are generally slow moving versus fast moving, fast growing and slow growing? Yeah, you get the idea. There's a lot of categories, and also arboreal or terrestrial or phosphorial, like your Haplopluma lividums. That's the ones that burrow down that you rarely get to see. So before you even buy a tarantula, you really should do your research before buying one. Don't just buy any tarantula that you see at the pet store, because the pet store owner clerks may not know how to take care of it, and sometimes they may give you false information. So the way I recommend people to research your tarantulas is to watch my videos. I've posted a lot of tips and tricks of how to take care of teas. I showed you exactly how to sex teas, how they molt, etc. And also my most popular Mythbusters series. They're great because they're aimed for new beginners. They have detailed care sheets. It's probably one of the best videos on internets about care sheets and giving you specific information about the tarantula, you know, like how they cost and whatnot. But I do recommend everyone who hasn't bought a tarantula or is going to think of buying a tarantula to purchase this book right here. Now this is the Tarantula Keeper's Guide. This is by our Canadian hobbyist Stanley A. Schultz and his late wife Margaret. It's a very in-depth book about tarantulas and how to take care of them. Talks about centipedes, black widows, what to feed your tarantula, how to spot a mature male versus a female. These are A.chalcodes, and that's A. moderatum. Got some nice pictures. How to sex them, how to breed them. Most of my videos are based from this book. The only thing that isn't good about this book is that some of the care sheets are not really in depth, so that's where I come in and fill the gaps of this book. So definitely recommend getting this book. This is about $21. You can get them from Tarantula Canada if you order them. I'm sure they can ship them internationally for you guys, but definitely a very good book, and we call this a Tarantula Bible because it's a very great book. Yeah, there's the guinea pigs. Stealing the show, aren't you? So the way I would recommend a first owner is to buy something that is very slow moving, very docile, not too defensive, generally good eater, and a good size. You don't want to start off with very fast tarantulas because the speed might overwhelm you. You can have your tea escape and it might upset your parents into thinking maybe a tarantula is not good for you. So these are the following tarantulas that I recommend for a new beginner that's getting into the tarantula world. Now, whenever people ask me about tarantulas, I always tell them this is one of them that you should get. And this, of course, is the Brachypelma smithi, also known as the Mexican red knee. And that's exactly what this tea looks like. And here's Athena in the full flesh. Now, this is a tarantula that gets up to having a 6-inch lace span, and it's very easy for the first-time owner. They really don't need very humid environments. They like dry substrate with a water dish. They're very easy to take care of, even as spiderlings. What I like about them is that they generally have a docile temperament, although they do have a tendency to kick hairs, and they do have very good appetites. Now this specimen is around 5.5 inches. She gets a little bit bigger, like around 6 inches. And you don't really need that much to take care of. Like, this is her enclosure. It's a 6-liter shoebox enclosure with potting stool as substrate, a little water dish, and a little cave to hide. As you can see, she's perfect in there. And you don't really need those big 5-gallon glass tanks to house one perfectly. Although they can be a little bit more expensive than adults, spiderlings are actually easy to come by and quite cheap. Spiderlings can go on sale for at least $25 as a 1/2 inch to 1 inch, but as mature females like this, you're going to be looking for around $150 to $200, depending on the owner or where you find them. Very nice tea. And I'll just give you an idea of her temperament. Okay, after my last video, I learned not to prod them with my fingers. And I'll show you, it's pretty docile. Cool. Alright, next tea. Now here's a second tarantula that I would recommend for a new time hobbyist. This is known as the Brachypelma emilia, the Mexican painted redleg, or the Mexican true redleg. It's an impressive looking tarantula, most notably the dark triangle on its carapace. Its care conditions are very similar to the bee smithi. They do well on dry substrate with a water dish as well as a little cave. Their temperaments are generally handleable like the bee smithi. The bee smithi can be handled, although the emilia can be a little bit nervous, but not too bad. My female is pretty calm when she wants to be, and I've handled her a couple times on video. Very cool tarantula, and they're priced almost the same as the bee smithi, as spiderlings are very easy to take care of. Yeah, there's a nice one. Okay, next one. Now this is the third tarantula that I recommend, and it's probably one of the top 3 in my list. Is known as the Brachypelma albopilosum, also known as the Honduran curly hair. Curly hairs are excellent for tarantulas. They're very easy to take care of. They're like smithi and emilia. They have very good appetites, although they do have very slow growth patterns. But with that comes with a great reward, a very good longevity. This female is 24 years old. I bought her 16 years ago as an adult specimen, and likely these mature between 5 to 7 years old. I got this one for $50 many years ago, and these are probably one of the cheapest Brachypelmas and the one that is most affordable compared to the red legs. They generally have the best temperaments of all the Brachypelmas. As you can see, I can pinch grab my female. This is the way I pinch grab her. And you can see the prominent epigastric furrow, which indicates it's a female. You know, she's very dear to my heart. She's the best tarantula that I ever had, and consequently the best one that I love. I love this one. As you can see, very docile temperament. They get around 6 inches, a little bit bigger than the B. emilia, almost the same size as the B. smithi. And they generally do well in 6-liter shoebox enclosures, or you can go with the one that I have, a 5-gallon glass tank. Again, cave and a water dish. And for substrate, you can use inorganic potting soil, which means no fertilizer, or eco-earth. Eco-earth is the substrate that comes in a brick, and it looks like this, coconut fiber. They tend to do extremely well, especially as spiderlings. They grow very fast as males. For those of you who remember my channel, I got a bee albopilosum 3 years ago. I named him Kira, and matured in 2 short years as a male. One of the fastest growing Brachypelmas than most, but certainly very rewarding to have. So here's the 4th tarantula that I recommend for a new time hobbyist. This is known as the Eupalaestrus campestratus, also known as the pink zebra beauty. So I'm going to give her a worm because I'm actually trying to power feed this female so I can mate with my mature male. Let's see how well she eats on camera. Yeah, so this is a very impressive tarantula. This is also a big one, getting up to a 6-inch leg span. Why they call it pink zebra beauty is that if you can see the hairs on the legs, especially the hind legs, you can see they have sort of like a pinkish color to them. And that's why they call it that. Well, I guess she isn't that hungry. This species, along with the Eupalaestrus E.weijenberghi, are said to be the most docile species out there. They're a lot more difficult to come by. I paid for this female back when she was about 1.5 inches, around $60. But you can probably find them online, like swiftsinverts.com or kenthebugeye.com, for around $30 to $40 as about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Definitely would recommend this because they are great eaters and they have one of the best temperaments of all. So that is the Eupalaestrus campestratus, the pink zebra beauty. So let's grab another terrestrial one. Oh, there we go. Good job, Yasmin. And consequently, Yasmin happens to be the very first tarantula that I bought from Tarantula Canada. And she was number 11 on my list of teas. Alright, here's a new one that I did not recommend in my previous list because I never actually owned one until now. This is possibly the best tarantula that I ever recommend. It's probably better than your B. albopilosum and your B. smithi, although it's probably the most tough one to find. This is known as the Euathalus species red, also known as the Chilean flame. And you can see this is probably the most docile specimen that I have, and she's extremely handleable. This is probably the tarantula in my collection that is probably the most tolerant to handling. My B. smithi is kind of nervous, and my albopilosum, you know, she's a bit too old to enjoy handling anymore, so I love to handle this one. Now, this is actually full grown. This is probably the best of both worlds of if the first time buyer doesn't want a huge tarantula. This is around 2.5 inches, and you can see she's pretty small and she's pretty comfortable in a 2-liter shoebox enclosure. Again, typical setup is the water dish and cave and substrate. As you can see, she's very calm. I named her Amber. And she's 2-inch female, was about $100. And you can see why they call it species red, because of the red abdomen. Again, very easy to take care of. They require dry conditions with the water dish in there. They generally like weekly light misting. You can see she's reluctant to go back into her enclosure. See, this is the commercial. Buy a species red, or species orange or yellow. They're pretty much identical. And I believe Swiss Inverts has some of these species yellow. Not the best eaters, but generally a favorite for handling, if the owner chooses to do so. Okay, so another tarantula that I can recommend for beginners, but not necessarily ones that I would recommend handling, is this one here. This is known as the Chaco Goldoni, Grammostola pulchripes, formerly known as Grammostola areostriata. This is a impressive tea that gets up to having a 8-inch leg span. This is the second largest in the genus, next to the G. grossa, which gets around having a 8 to 9-inch leg span. It's huge. And consequently, this is probably one of the tarantulas that I want to get for my wish list. Very good eater. They're generally pretty cheap to come by. Half an inch usually go on sale for around $15 to $20. And as mature females, they get up to having a $125 to $150 price tag. They're generally good eaters, but their temperament is sometimes a lot to be desired. Some of the specimens are rather calm, but I have some individuals that are actually really downright evil. So I'll touch Peach. And this you should always do when you handle a tarantula. Make sure to prod the abdomen with a paintbrush and see how she reacts. As you can see, she is probably not the best tarantula to handle, but certainly recommended for the beginner because they're pretty easy to take care of and they're generally good eaters. Next. Okay, this is another Grammosola that I can recommend for beginners, although not the best handling one. This is known as the Grammosola pulchra, also known as the Brazilian black. This here is my 3-inch male named Roy. Definitely one of the prettiest tarantulas because of their black color. Again, they're very easy to take care of, especially as spiderlings. Keep them dry with a water dish and a hide. As slings, you probably want to add a little bit more moisture by just soaking the substrate. But again, this is not a tarantula that I could recommend from handling because sometimes they can be a lot iffy in their temperament. So again, I'll just prod my male, see how... Yeah, he's okay, not bad. But the only thing I don't recommend handling this species because as adults, they get up to having a 7 to 7.5 inch leg span. They're huge, and their fangs are like almost an inch long. As you probably saw in my 100th feeding video, you saw my G. pulchra female fangs. They're huge. And this is probably not a tea that you want to get bitten by, but I recommend them because they're pretty low potent in venom. If you get bitten by one, or any of the teas that I've mentioned so far, they're pretty much like a wasp sting. Maybe a little bit more painful, but overall not too bad. Not as potent as your P. regalis. Very nice guy. Guess who? Here's Talia. It's been a while since we last seen her. So this is pretty much the most iconic tarantula that everyone starts off with in their collection. This was constantly the very first tarantula that I started off with back 18 years ago. This is known as the Grammosola rosea, also known as the Chilean rosehair, rosy hair, whatever the pet stores label them. So rose hairs come in two forms. You have the normal form that you've seen right here, and actually have the red form, which is over here. And let me just prod my little red-headed Lois to come out to say hello. Yeah, she's a little bit on the skittish side. Yeah, so this is what a red form rose hair looks like. Not very common seen in pet stores. You can probably get them online. And this is probably the most iconic ones, the ones that have the pink carapace. Now, rose hairs, tarantulas, I personally don't recommend them as good beginners for two main reasons. One is that they're really not the greatest handleable tea because they have really unpredictable mood swings, just like your Grammosola pulchra and your pulchra piece. Sometimes it'll act very calmly, and then all of a sudden they just suddenly lose their tolerance and they actually might bite you. Also, the second reason is that these are infamous for going on feeding fasts. So I've gotten a lot of replies and messages about concerned hobbyists why my rose hair wouldn't eat. Well, this is very normal. A lot of rose hairs will just stop eating for no apparent reason. We just don't know why. Maybe because the tarantula is very slow growing. They actually are. So they're not really that interested in eating, or they just simply are not very hungry species. Talia hasn't been eating for the past 3 to 4 months now. This is why you haven't seen her in any of my feeding videos, despite her having a good abdomen. So I'm not really worried. I just keep feeding her as I normally do, and she's fine. I guess she's in pre-molt, but I really don't know. It's been a while since she last molted. And Lois too, sometimes she likes to go on feeding fasts, but not as bad. But generally, they're very good for the beginner. They're certainly very cheap. They're very affordable. Adults like this cost around $25, and they're very easy to find in pet stores. You just have to accept the fact that when the Rosehair stops eating, it's completely normal, and whenever they decide to go on defensive temperaments, or temper tantrums as I like to call them, again, this is completely normal, as these Rosehairs are very iffy. Okay, so that concludes pretty much all the terrestrials that I owned. Oh yeah, also, I did forget to mention Aphonopelma species. Well, you can certainly go for your A.chalcodes desert blonde, and I don't really have many Aphonopelmas here because in Canada we rarely get them here in imports. I don't know why, but this is a tea that I would like to get on my wish list. So you can get yourself the desert blonde, which is right over here. They're pretty much like your B. emilias. This is pretty much your full adult size, like 4.5 inches. They generally have okay eaters. Mine doesn't really eat that much, but then again, she's pretty old. She's 21 years old. She's pretty up there with my curly hair. Alright, now for tarantulas that are heavy webbing. Well, the only tarantula that I could recommend for the beginner, although you do have to accept that it is a pretty fast tarantula, is this tarantula right over here. This is known as the green bottle blue, Chromatopelma cyanopubescens. This is a 6-inch female, full grown, and possibly the most beautiful one to collect, and a must-have in your collection. This is a very heavy webber, and very easy to take care of. They also like dry substrate with a water dish and a little hide. Now, if you're going to your arboreal genus, or arboreal species, you're very limited of the ones that you actually can choose. There's only one docile species that I even can recommend, and those are the pink toes, the Euathalus. So typical examples would be your Euathalus, the most common pink toe, and the Euathalus metallica, which is the metallic white toe. Very similar to the Euathalus, except for the fact that it has white hairs all over their body. So this is Annabelle. She is my female Euathalus. She's actually fully mature, and she does well in a 1-gallon Rubbermaid jar. And very easy what I do with that. Again, Eco-Eartha substrate, a cork bark mounted on its side, and air holes along the perimeter of the jar, as well as ventilation on the cover. So Euathalus get around to having a 4.5-inch leg span. Metallicas are huge monsters. They get up to having a near 6-inch leg span. They're generally pretty handleable, except for the fact that they can be jumpy at times. Now, Euathalus spiderlings are a little bit harder to take care of, but Sturmy76 has a great video on how to take care of Euathalus slings and how to actually get them to survive correctly. And I've been watching that video, and I find it's very interesting and very good information that he made. And it's so much that I might actually get into collecting those Euathalus slings. But most of these Euathalus are actually affordable in pet stores. You can find one like this for around $30–40, depending on where you find them. They're absolutely a must-have. Now, there's another one that you can collect. It's called the Euathalus versicolor, which is known as the Antilles pink toe. Now, the Antilles pink toe is a cool tarantula, but they are a lot faster than Euathalus, and they're a lot more defensive too. But they are the most colorful one. Let me just open up the cage and show you what she looks like in the light. You have to excuse the lighting here because my room isn't the greatest of lighting. Let me just put my pencil case there. Well, there we go. Look at that. Yeah, this is a mature female. Well, I would say mature juvenile female. Very beautiful. This is known as the green form. There's also another form of versicolor that has a turquoise carapace, much as the late tetra that I had a couple of years ago. Very nice avic, again, a good starter one, but probably not one that I would recommend handling because they do have defensive tendencies. Okay. Now for the larger species, you know, like they get having to 10 or more inch leg spans, probably the best one to go for is your Lasiodora parahybana, the salmon pink bird eater. So the salmon pink bird eaters, I don't want to take my females out. There's one over there, and there's one over there. They get huge, again very easy to take care of. They require a little bit more humidity than most tarantulas, but they're generally very hardy. Daniela, who is over here, was a half-inch sling back in 2009, and right now she's almost a good 5 inches. Very easy to take care of. I don't recommend getting Theraphosa sturmies or Theraphosa blondies because they require insane humidity conditions. Especially, it might be difficult for the first-time owner to accomplish that. And the way I do it is using potting soil as substrate. Keep a water dish, soak the substrate to allow the bottom layers to get wet, and I block the ventilation. This is a must-have if you're starting to collect very high humidity species like your Euophalus lividum. Now, Euophalus lividum, the cobalt blue, I don't actually have a nice specimen of it since mine unfortunately died. The cobalt blues are definitely not recommended for the first-time owner because they're very fast. They're very potent in venom, and they can have a nasty bite, and they can actually bite more than once. So you really have to be careful of those. Another one that I don't recommend buying for the first time is like your OBT, P. murinus, any of the pokies like your P. formosa or your P. regalis. P. camergi would be a good intermediate tarantula if you wanted to go something beyond the avic. Definitely not P. cancerides, very defensive. You do need experience in owning one. Here's the P. ornata, definitely very nervous and probably one of the most defensive in my collection. And so forth. Trapdoors too, you need a little bit more experience on them because they can be quite dangerous for the first time hobbyists. They're very fast and quite defensive, very mean too. Let's see. P. regalis, fasciatas. And I think that is about it. I hope this helps everyone for your new recommendations and asking yourself what tarantula would you buy for a new time hobbyist. Hope you liked the video, hope it helped everyone, and thanks for watching.